Hey guys, Peter here to do an album review. Today I'm here to tell you all about the latest from the Wise Man's Fear, Valley of Kings, out March 29th on Sharp Tone Records. This album has 11 tracks, 36 minutes in length, and this is the band's third full-length studio album. These guys are from Indiana. They're a metalcore slash fantasycore band. At least that's how they label themselves, but they also include a lot of deathcore elements into their sound. The melting pot of those genres creates a very unique signature approach as far as the overall soundscape of this record is concerned, and even of previous records. But I really feel that this album is really going to open doors and set the table for where this band is going to go in the future. Now, as far as the overall record is concerned, I really feel that there's four elements at play that really dictate all the different dynamics of the album. And that to me is the structure, the overall sound, the lyrics, and the vocals. As far as structure is concerned, I felt that it was really interesting how they approached this album. This is a record that feels like it's very interconnected, with every single song almost continue where the previous one left off. A lot of the tracks really bleed one into the other. Not all of them do, but some of them have that aspect to it. But when you look at the overall picture of the album, you really feel like every single song continues into the next track. So this allows the album to be very fluid, very dynamic, and almost to feel like just one whole track divided by 11 chapters versus looking at 11 individual songs. That is the structure that you have here and the overall picture of the record. Now, when you go deep into each and every single song, you find that every track has its own individual structure, its own individual approach. Very dynamic as well, very volatile, changing styles, changing approaches, going in very different directions. No two songs sound alike. So this creates a very interesting dynamic, which is two layers of volatility. You have this continuous approach that creates this up and down roller coaster ride across the whole record, and then underneath it, when you look at the individual tracks, they also have that same up and down roller coaster feel within themselves. So this album is a roller coaster ride within a roller coaster ride. That's perhaps the best way to describe the overall structure of the record. As far as the sound is concerned, I really like the merger of metalcore and deathcore. To me, that really expands beyond the boundaries of one of the genres, allows their creativity to run wild, and allows them to go anywhere they want with their soundscape on the record. Really creating interesting songs, really creating dynamic songs, fluid songs, songs that change on a dime, songs that don't have a very specific approach track after track, so they don't become repetitive at all, because you have a different sound, you have a different way of constructing a track, and they didn't duplicate those efforts song after song. So this is an album that to me sounds fresh with every single track. It sounds different, it feels different, and sometimes it almost feels disconnected if it wasn't for that overall structure that really keeps the album concise and together. So I really like the overall sound that the album has. I really like the guitar sound on the album. Very dynamic, very fluid, heavy, brutal at times, very melodic in others, interesting riffs, interesting melodies, interesting overall approach to how the guitars were recorded on the record. I really love everything surrounding the sound of the album. It's just very dynamic. It really is expanding beyond the walls of deathcore or metalcore. It really goes way beyond that and creates a very unique soundscape for this band and for this record. As far as lyrics are concerned, to me they play a huge role in the overall concept of the album. The storytelling aspect, the fantasy aspect of the record is there because of the lyrics, and then obviously because of the way the vocals transmit those lyrics into the audience. But I really feel like the lyrics deserve some attention on this album because they play a huge role. They are not the backbone of the record, but they're definitely one of those core elements that really dictates the atmosphere, the mood that the songs have. So you have to mention the lyrics, because without them, without that fantasy aspect of the lyrics, the overall concept of the record falls apart. Last but not least, the vocals. My God, the vocals are so dynamic. I mean, the sound on the record, the merger of metalcore and deathcore creates a very dynamic sound, but the vocals are no different. They're not created in a vacuum. They have the same aspect of the more melodic approach, or the more brutal, guttural approach. The changes between the two, I'm not even talking about changing on a track-by-track basis where you get more clean vocals in one song and then more brutal vocals in the song following that track. No, I'm talking about within the same song, the changes of melodic to brutal from the verses to the chorus, then using melodic style vocals with more brutal style vocals as backing vocals behind it to give some more texture, to give some more volume, to give some more substance. Really interesting approach. And it's not just the approach that's interesting, it's how they delivered and how they created a record that feels continuous. It doesn't feel like it's broken into pieces. The songs, having all of these moving parts, sound-wise and vocally, still feel very well connected. The transitions are beautiful. You don't really feel like the song is made up of different portions. It really feels like one single body of work. And when you have this kind of approach vocally, these kind of changes, very fluid, very dynamic, it's really hard to have them transition from one to the other in a really continuous way where the song still feels together, where you still have that red line that goes through the whole track. But they did it on every single song. There's not one track on this album where you feel like there's a disconnect between the two vocal approaches or that they don't work well together. Even when they're merged together in the same portion of the song, in the same piece of the song, they still coexist beautifully. And that to me is kudos to the band for having that ability to create an album that really comes to life on the individual track basis, but then as a whole, as a whole record, the way it sounds is absolutely magnificent, and the vocals play a huge role in that aspect. Overall, this album to me is multi-layered, extremely complex, and not easy to deliver, but they did. They created a magnificent album, kudos to them. Really a difficult record to put together. There's so many different moving pieces, there's so many different layers, so many parts, not only on the musical side, but also on the vocal side. Just so many moving things, so many things that could have gone wrong, so many things that could have just not merged well together, that could not flow well together, and they were able to surpass all of those difficulties and create an album that's filled with life, that's filled with energy, that has a heartbeat in each and every single song, that it's unique with every single song, and still sounds very cohesive and very together and feels as one. As far as songs are concerned, I want to start off with Breath of the Wild, a very melodic, almost melancholic start to this track. Clean vocals, they add a little bit intensity and they add a little bit of energy, specifically in that opening piece. The song then gets heavier, the harsh vocals come in, the dynamic changes, it becomes a lot more intense, it becomes a lot more brutal, and they do a great job alternating those two different momentums as the song progresses. The more clean, melancholic part of the track with a more brutal, more intense, more aggressive side of the song. This track almost feels like waves coming and going as the tide comes in. You get this notion of the song just weaving itself in and out through these moments, through these two different momentums that the track has. And then to finish off with this really incredible melancholic keyboard melody is the perfect closing for a song that has these many ups and downs as you move through it. And as this song is closing off with that keyboard melody, Tree of Life, which is the next song, starts off with that same melody. So here's a perfect example of what I'm talking about in terms of songs bleeding one into the other and you losing track if you're still listening to the first song or you're listening to the fourth or fifth song, because they're so well merged that they almost become as one. These two are a perfect example because you finish off with that keyboard melody then transitions on to Tree of Life and it starts off with that same melody. The song is very guitar driven in my opinion. The guitars and drums actually, they pair up a little bit and they become the driving force that really pushes this song forward. Changing vocal styles really dictates the dynamic changes that the song have. I really don't feel that necessarily this is a song that changes too much musically. I felt that the guitar melodies were pretty steady or at least very consistent all the way through. The dynamic changes on this track were more noticeable from a vocal perspective. It really dictated the intensity and the aggressiveness that the song had going between one and the other. But they did a perfect balance of keeping those separated and then still being able to merge them together in order to give that same up and down feel that Breath of the Wild had, but this time is done through the vocal approach. I really like that. I like the aspect that it has in it. I like the dynamic that it adds to the song. On this track, they added a little bit of a curveball. They added what it feels to me like a flute during the last third of the track, and that to me was something that I was not expecting. It just came in very sporadic. It comes in just for a few seconds and doesn't stay in for too long, but it added such a great melody, it added such a great feel. It really brought that fantasy feel to the song, to the lyrics, and really enhanced the lyrics of the song, What a nice little touch, what a nice little caveat that they added there. And then you get the closing with the chorus where the song becomes a little bit more melodic. It has a more melodic approach as it reaches the end of the track. Last but not least, The Cave. Brutal opening, both vocally and musically for this track. Really a deathcore track as it starts. Powerful, heavy, really heavy and really brutal. The smooth transition between the chorus and the more melodic, clean vocal approach, it to me is where this song really wins itself. Once again, really proving that they know how to balance the deathcore with the metalcore side of the band, bring them both together and really create smooth transitions both musically and vocally within the same songs. To me, this is one of those tracks that really proves that you could be at the highest point of brutality within a track and then suddenly drop into the most deepest parts of melody and melancholy without having a huge break, or at least without letting the listener feel like there's a huge break within the song. To me, this is a song that achieves that perfect balance of those two polar opposite ends and does it once again musically and vocally throughout the whole song without ever losing a beat. Perfect track and perfect way of constructing it and delivering it. Alright guys, this is it. This is the Wise Man's Fear once again with Valley of Kings out May 29th on Sharptone Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care guys.